Good morning, I'm WaywornWyrm, and welcome to my channel, and welcome to episode 5 of the Stolen Lands, To the Old Sycamore. Oleg and Lucion decided to go investigate the visitor when they heard him call out greetings. Oleg lightly carried his crossbow in his hands, and Lucion, while not wearing his armor, had his longsword clearly on his belt. "Ho there, traveler. I am Oleg, the owner of this trading post." "What brings you here?" Oleg called out in a friendly manner, but clearly with a guarded tone. The man stopped just inside the gate to the trading post. He was an older human, although it was hard to tell just how old. He was mostly bald on top, but grizzled brown hair on the sides, a weather-worn face, and a mustache that curled around his mouth. He was of average height and on the leaner side, and wore simple brown traveling attire. "Hello to you as well. I'm Jehod Kavkin. I am a traveling cleric and hunter. Recently, my travels have brought me into Brevoy, where I heard about this expedition and came here to offer my aid." Lucian stepped forward a step. "I am Lucian Volso, the leader of this expedition. Your offer is very much appreciated. However, we already have a cleric in our party. I'm afraid you would be very little use for your services. Or rather, we would have very little use for them." The man seemed to take the news in stride. "Very well." Then he looked at Oleg. "Oleg, do you have an extra bed I could rent from you?" Oleg looked at the man with some confusion and suspicion. After all, it was not often that strangers came to his trading post just to stay. "I might. May I ask why you're staying? They clearly said they have no need for you." Jode smiled, a warm, kindly smile. "By all means, I would like to stay near and close in case my services are needed. If not by Lucian and his party, maybe from you, or the soldiers I passed on the way here who claim to be stationed right here at this trading post." Oleg nodded. "We can work something out. If you don't mind waiting, we are just finishing up breakfast, and I'll be out to find a bed for you, and we'll get you settled in, nice and well." "Thank you, kind sir," Jode said before he looked around and eventually found a dry place to sit, and he crossed his legs, his eyes lightly closed. A little over an hour later, Lucian and his party were finishing packing up their 2 remaining horses and were almost ready to set out. Jode approached the party. "Lucian, I have a request of you, if you'll hear me out." Lucian looked at him for a minute before giving his assent. "I am a cleric of Erastil, and I've heard rumors of lost temples to Erastil in the area. While you are exploring, will you keep an eye out for any such place?" Tiber stepped forward before Lucian had a chance to respond. "Of course we will. Just as I am sure you would help me if there were lost temples to Sarenrae." Jode smiled once more. "Thank you, fellow cleric. One more small request. There is a temple somewhere around that is very old and apparently guarded by an angry bear. I'm looking for that temple most of all." Lucian sighed at his choice being taken away from him. Not that he was likely to deny the cleric anyway, but it was an undermining of his authority to not have the chance. Of course, we will do what we can. I can't promise anything, but we will keep an eye out. And if we do come across a temple guarded by an angry bear, we'll be sure to let you know as soon as is practical. Thank you, Lucian. May the Stag God watch over you and protect you in your hunts. The mention of stag did not go unnoticed by Lucian. Of course he knew who Erastil was, and vaguely that one of Erastil's epithets was the Stag God. But it seemed odd that this stranger would choose that particular epithet when there was a bandit leader in the area who was also evoking the imagery of a stag. Erastil had other names. It was just odd that this one was chosen. But Lucian shook the feeling off as they set out on a beautiful morning. They marched all through the day, only stopping for a lunch as they slowly made their way through the plains of this area of the Green Belt. Despite the day being long, the party got along quite well. Finally, darkness fell just as they were entering the hills that made up most of the green belt that was not covered by the gnarl marches. They had pitched their camp and had a good fire going, and were just thinking of heading off to bed when a cloud passed over Umbria's face. She held a finger to her mouth for quiet, and indicated that she heard sounds coming from all around the camp. Lucian was the first to notice the bandits were closing in on them. He pulled his sword and rushed one of them. The bandit was surprised by Lucian's speed and advance. He was also not prepared for the upward slice Lucian did that ended the bandit's life. Petra was the next to see the bandits, and she charged after two. As she engaged them both, one managed to parry her thrusts. However, the second one was nowhere near as lucky. He caught a blade to his inner thigh and collapsed. Tiber was the next to react, slicing a bandit and opening up his stomach. As the man sunk to his knees, Tiber bent his head in quick prayer before kicking him backward. The bandit who Petra was still engaged with went on the attack. Unfortunately for him, Petra was able to anticipate his attacks and successfully dodged and parried, the blade never coming close to touching her or her armor. One of the other two bandits pulled out his bow and shot it towards Umbria. All it managed to do was thud into the log she was sitting on and alert her to exactly where he was as he'd stood up from cover. She may have been the first of the party to notice the bandits' approach, but she was the last to key in their location. As the last remaining bandit rushed Lucian and attacked him, he learned very quickly how well trained Lucian was with the sword and shield. Lucian never gave him an opening. Not with the superior training and reach. Umbria jumped up and faced the bandit who shot at her. A missile of magical force shot from her hands and struck the bandit right in the chest. He was hit hard by the spell, but remained up for the moment. As Lucian was trading blows with his bandit, he was able to push the bandit's short sword out wide and leave him exposed for a strike that brought him down. Lucian spun around, with murderous intent in his eyes, as he scanned for another bandit before settling on the archer and rushed over to him. Petra continued trading blows with the bandit she was engaged with. So far, neither of them were able to find an opening they could exploit. Between the size difference and the nimbleness, they were fairly evenly matched, at least for now. Suddenly, Petra felt the bandit's sword shudder during a hold, and his eyes popped wide. Then she saw the scimitar finish pushing through him, and she noticed Tiber there for the first time behind the bandit. The last remaining bandit clearly wanted to run with his whole group killed so quickly, but with Lucion engaging with him, he dropped his bow and pulled out his short sword and recklessly attacked. In his rage, he managed to knock aside both Lucian's sword and his shield long enough for an opening to strike. However, his thrust was turned aside by Lucian's armor, and Lucian remained unharmed. As the bandit was pushing Lucian back on a defensive stance, Umbria shot another missile. This time, it hit the bandit, and he went down and did not get up. The party cleaned up their mess, with Petra inventorying their new acquisitions once again. The party was a little incredulous. This group of bandits was too large to be the remaining bandits from the Thorn River camp, which means the bandit activity hadn't stopped, and they were still close to Oleg's. Their prisoner must have lied. They broke camp early the next day and traveled on. It took them another whole day before they finally saw a large sycamore in the distance. There was no doubt that this was the tree they were looking for. It was large, and was the only tree anywhere nearby. And there was the fact that none of them had ever seen a tree that even came close to matching the size of this sycamore. Lucian stopped them a few miles from the tree. "We stop here tonight. Night is falling, and I don't feel comfortable approaching the tree in the dark. We will get to it in the morning, and we will be vigilant. We know there are creatures there. We are going to extract something from them, probably violently. But tonight, we make camp. We eat, we drink, and we prepare. Tomorrow will be a hard day." Thank you so much for listening to episode 5 of The Stolen Lands. And tune in Friday for the end of the week chat. Thank you very much.